Hi, everyone. My name is Yumna, and I work in the development sector. And today I wanted to talk to you about harassment and the workplace. And initially, when I was thinking about this topic, it was more related to women. But then I realized, well, we can't exclude men as well. Of course, they're part of society. And harassment is a topic that really is for everyone. So, before we talk about women rights and women laws in Pakistan, and in particular, I would like to talk about one particular law, which is Protection of Women Against Harassment in Workplace, which was an act that was passed in 2010. So it's been a long journey. It has been passed. However, we fully do not really understand it. In fact, I think many of us have not even read the act in itself. So we're going to read the act today. We're going to find out how we can implement it, what are the rules, how do you formulate, and how do you actually act upon the act. Yes, that's very funny if I say it. How do you act actually the act? How do you implement it and formalize it? But before I talk about that, let's just talk about harassment and really what do we think about it? Have we really understood it well? Do we think it exists? Do we think it does not exist? Well, for all the naysayers and doubters and skeptics, I have to tell you that harassment does exist and it exists in every form. It exists in really every country, in every society. There are different kinds of harassment. You have to understand what does this word really entail. There is so I'm going to introduce another word. It's called discrimination. But what harassment means is that any communication, which is verbal or non-verbal, it could be physical communication, it could be non-verbal communication, that makes you feel bad. Now, when I say it makes you feel bad, let me explore and let's look deep down into it. It means that anything that makes you belittle yourself, if you have a low self-esteem, if you feel degraded, if you feel humiliated, if you feel abused emotionally or mentally or physically, all those words, that means you have been harassed. That is the syndrome of being harassed that encapsulates this whole idea that you felt threatened, you felt violated, you felt sad, you felt deprived, you felt demeaned, you were demoted. That is harassment. Now, the different kinds of harassment, there is racial discrimination. So there's racial harassment when you make fun of someone's appearance or how they look, how their eyes are, how the color of the hair and skin is. That's also harassment. There is harassment against religion. For example, if you do not respect anyone else's traditions or holidays or makes jokes about them, that is also harassment. Then there is, of course, the work that we want to talk about right now, and then in detail is gender harassment. When you say, oh, women are not supposed to do ABC kind of work, or women can't be pilots, or women can't fight the war, or they can't be good soldiers, or even with men, when you tend to say, oh, men can't cook, or men can't be good pastry chefs, or men can't be good barbers. So that is also another kind of harassment, which was gender harassment. And then there is race, there is gender, there's sexual orientation. I'd like to point out that we have an act that is also about protecting the rights of transgenders. We'll talk about that in a while as well. So that is basically harassment. Any idea or any verbal, non-verbal communication that makes you feel unsafe and threatened. So after understanding what harassment is and the different kinds of harassment, the question is that if we know all this, why are people still being harassed? Now that's a question that we should be asking. Why is it that we are having so many complaints? Very recently, if you looked in the media, you have the motorway incident. If you read reports, and I would suggest that you read a document that is called the Pakistan Health and Demographic Survey of 2017 and 18, which talks about gender-based violence. And I have some figures in front of me, and according to this report, which is an authorized report published by the government, it says that gender-based violence in Pakistan, 32% was reported in Punjab, 52% in KB, 66% in FATA, 32% in Islamabad, 59% in Balochistan, and 18% in Sindh. And another report that you could refer to is the Safety Audit Report of Public Transport that took place in Lahore in 2017. And this report asked women commuters if they felt safe while traveling. And not so surprisingly, 90% of women said that they had been harassed on public transport in buses. 82% of women commuters said that they had been pinched and they had been groped and they felt physically unsafe while walking and while crossing roads and basically just using public transport. Interestingly, Express Tribune, they did a survey, and the survey was for men. And they asked this question for men that have you ever been assaulted and abused in your life? And astonishingly, there were 60% of men who said that at least once in their life of being in Pakistan, or being a Pakistani, they have felt threatened and they have been assaulted. So these numbers across the board tell you that men and women both feel harassed, and this is a situation that needs to be addressed. Now, coming back to the main question, why is there a culture of discrimination or harassment? Who are the people behind it? And are these and where has this come from? And frankly, it has been building over years. There's another word that I'd like to introduce, and this is called patriarchy. Patriarchy means a whole system, structural barriers that do not allow women to progress, where you disallow their equality and equity. And because we want to first keep it, we want to really analyze it, and I want to have a conversation, hear your experiences as well, and do not want to exclude men and women, both of you. Okay, so I have a message. Can you share slides? Well, I don't have slides. I have a toolkit which I'll share with you. Okay, hold on. We are going live, but we are okay. How do I share the toolkit? Should I just send you a link, or should I just share my screen? Okay, I will figure this out, Ali. Just give me a second and let me just complete what I was about to say, and then we're going to come to the slides as well. Don't worry, we will share a toolkit with you, which I hope you can keep with yourself, and it can always be very useful. Now, coming back to our question, why is there a culture? Okay, let's talk about our culture, and I talk about our culture in general forms. There is a culture of silence in our country. There is a culture of indifference in our country. There is a culture of not taking action in our country. There is a culture of just pretending to be deaf and blind. Why? Because we're afraid to speak out. And sadly, it's an institutionalized system where people are said that you just put your head down, you obey the boss, you follow the rules, and you will be fine. However, we have not been following rules, and this is what's going on. So, why are people afraid to speak out about these issues? Well, people are afraid that if you report, or if you intervene, or if you witness something, if you witness an incident and you report it, there's going to be a culture of shame. Everyone is going to point fingers at you. They will blame you. Yumna, ask questions, and okay, I will. Okay, fine, Arshan, I will ask questions, and yeah, okay, fine, got it. I'm going to ask you a few questions as well. And of course, we want to make it interactive. So I want the audience to know what they're thinking as well. And if you've ever feel harassed in your life in Pakistan, as a man, as a woman, as a transgender person, please do share your experiences right now. I want to hear your story, and I'll share my story with you as well. As I said, life is not perfect, and incidents really happen to all of us. We don't report it. That is the problem. As I said, that we are shrouded in a culture of silence and shame, and there's a lot of victim blaming as well. As you've seen in recent examples, if someone reports or makes a complaint, the first thing is that we tend to what we tend to do is that we tend to say that, oh, it's just a minor incident. So we don't take it seriously. We do not think about the consequences of uh, that person is experiencing, or we just degrade that whole experience, or I should say belittle that experience, that, oh, it's not that important, it happened to someone else, we don't care. However, you need to realize that people who have been harassed and are suffering, whether they're suffering in silence or whether they've reported this, they are going through physical, psychological, and emotional distress. And let us talk about what happens in workplace when an incident happens to you and you're afraid that, oh my god, how can I tell my colleagues? And who do I tell, first of all? So you ask these questions yourself. And while you're not getting any help, what is happening? You lose sleep, you are dissatisfied, you're demotivated, you have panic attacks. You think about changing your job and you're thinking, like, oh, I should leave this office, or you're like, I should change this career, or maybe I made the wrong choice, I should have gone for job A rather than coming to job B. And you're like, oh my god, I should go back to academics because maybe I'm not fit to work in the real world, or am I not fit to work in the practical world? So these are things that a person who is experiencing harassment is actually saying to himself or herself. And another thing is, firstly, to realize what are the signs of harassment. And as I said, the signs of harassment are where you feel demoted, you feel belittled, humiliated, and you feel that you are not fit to work anymore, and you're psychologically and mentally distressed. And examples of harassment, right? Someone's asking me what are the examples of harassment. Sharing crude jokes or laughing, whistling, those are signs of harassment. If, let's say, I work in an office with men and I've gone to drink water in kitchen and suddenly men look at me and start whistling, that's harassment. It also happens in shops, by the way. As soon as women enter shops, the shopkeeper or the little helper boy, they start whistling or singing songs, and that's weird. So that are examples of harassment. If you are suddenly talking loudly and sharing crude jokes or making jokes that make other people uncomfortable, that is also harassment. Trying to touch someone, the good thing about corona is that we've been asked to social distance ourselves, and that is the best thing. Why? Because when you're talking to another person, you don't want to be in their face. You always have to maintain a respectable distance. And whether corona or no corona, that's I would suggest that please follow this habit. You do not need to stand or sit with a person so close that you are touching their elbows. You need to keep a safe distance. And physical contact, unwilling, non-consensual physical contact, that is also discrimination, physical discrimination. It's also called sexual discrimination. Now, we have to realize we have the power to speak. You have the power to speak. We have eyes, we have ears, and we need to do something about it because we live in the society and only we can make a difference. Another thing that you need to do is to know about your rights and act. And let's come to this act, which is the act passed in 2010. It is called the Protection of Women Against Harassment in Workplace, that was passed in 2010. And this is an act that is applicable in the whole of Pakistan. So it's not just a federal level or an Islamabad based act. No, it's applicable everywhere. So, what does this act do? Well, first of all, this act says that men and women need to feel empowered and safe in the workplace, especially women. And if there are any unannounced and if there are any advances or if there are any complaints, then they need to be solved. So we cannot silence complaints. We need to have a system. We need to encourage complaints and complainants to come forward. So for that, first step is that you read the act. What do? You go and download it. It is available on National Assembly of Pakistan. It's available on UN's website. It's also available on the National Commission of Status of Women's website, which is a national commission on status of women, is a federal organization that works on the rights and policies for women. It talks about improving laws, so you can download this act. I mean, first step is to actually read and download and understand what this act is about. Now, this act is applicable to all organizations, whether it's the civil society, whether it's private organizations, whether it's a hospital, it's a software house, it's a tech company, it's a shoe shop, it's a bakery, all sorts of a media news agency, the radio station. This act is applicable everywhere. And employers who fail to pass this act, and when I say pass this act, it means that you have not made it part of your HR system. You can complain about them, and employers will be fined up to 1 lakh rupees. So, this is what the Constitution of Pakistan is saying, that employers, it is their responsibility to tell their employees what this act is. So you download it, you share it with your colleagues, you inform your HR. And now let's also talk a little bit about the processes and procedures. Like, you have the act, now what do you do with it? Simple question. All right, so you have the act, you've shared it with your HR, and according to this act, it tells you a system of processing complaints. So every organization should ratify this act, and you need to set up, and this is technical, so you need to set up a committee. This committee should be made of 3 people, ideally, minimum 3 people, and one of them has to be a woman. The people of this committee, they can be from one senior management, one middle level management, and one junior level management. So that's the composition. It's a very general composition, and you can change it. However, minimum 3 people, one has to be a woman. And this committee, it has to be, everyone should know who the people are in this committee, their names, their email IDs, they need to be shared. After this, there is a process. If there is a complaint, you need to bring it to the committee. And this is not a verbal complaint. It cannot be a WhatsApp complaint. It cannot be a telephone call. It has to be a recorded complaint. And there are structures and formats and templates available online. They're available on the National Commission of Status of Women. So you can follow that template as well. And logically, if you don't know what a template is, or if you have never made it, it's fine. I'll tell you right now. You need to write your name, you need to write the time of the incident, what was the incident, what was the complaint, who was involved, were there any observers, were there any witnesses? And let me tell you interestingly about this act that even if there are no witnesses, you can still file this complaint. All right, so you file. Okay, so let's talk about the process. You have the committee. We call it the inquiry committee, the IC. That's the word the act has. You have three people, and one has to be a woman. Senior level, middle level, and junior level management. That's the composition. Now, once this committee receives a complaint, they have to notify the complainant and the perpetrator that they received a complaint, and within 3 days they need to say that yes, we have received a complaint, we acknowledge the receipt, and we're going to do something about it. And then in the next 7 days, so you have day 3 where they say to both parties we received it. Then on day 7, which is, well, I should say after 7 days, so it's actually 10 days, day 10, they say that we have started progress and we are going to set a time and we're going to have a hearing. So this is the process, and in 30 days, so committee has 30 days to actually submit to the people. And when I say the people, the organization, the complainant, and the perpetrator, exactly the proceedings, which means that the committee has to, without any bias, investigate. They need to present the findings, and they need to make both parties, or if there were multiple parties, aware of the decision that they've taken. And in all fairness, both parties have a right to defend themselves, and both parties have the right to appeal against the decision as well. So, before we talk about the appeal, what decisions can the inquiry committee make? The decisions can be regarding, and when we talk about workplace, it could be about demotion, that you were promoted and now we're taking those privileges away. It could be about dismissal, that you have dismissed straight away or we're giving you notice period. It could be about taking away your privileges. If you have some perks that have been given by the organization, like a car or some benefits, that can be taken away as well. So the organization and the inquiry committee has all the rules, and also, yes, financial penalty that can also occur in this case. So this is the role of the act, and it's the role of the organizations to implement this act, and it is the role of the people and the employees to understand what this act is all about. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And if in your organization you don't have an inquiry committee, then it is your job to tell your HR, human resources, or your senior management, or talk it out in your Monday morning or Friday meetings, that we need to streamline and we need to institutionalize a proper system by which you have complaints, by which there's a process by which people can actually address complaints, redressal mechanism. That's really important. And as I said, even though this inquiry committee is related to cases against women in workplace, you can actually have a committee, a very general inquiry committee that deals with all sorts of issues across the board. So that is very important. Another key institute in Pakistan is the Ombudsman Office, the Wafaki Mohtasib, as we call it in Urdu. And this is at the federal level and it is also at the provincial level. So each province has the Ombudsman. So now, if your organization doesn't have a process, you can go to the ombudsman and you can fill a complaint as well. So they are there to listen to your complaints. And the Wafaki Mohtasib, or the head of the ombudsman, the head of the department, he has powers of the civil judge. So he can listen to you, he can accept your case. So there's a hearing, he will listen to you, he or she actually, they can listen to you and all parties and give a hearing, and they can punish as well. And let me tell you, the punishment. Okay, so what is the punishment? The punishment is that a person can be fined for 3 to 5 years, and a person can be imprisoned for 3 to 5 years, and there is a penalty as well, which is from 25,000 rupees to 1 lakh. So if there has been a case and the ombudsman finds you guilty, these are the two punishments that are there by law, that the ombudsman has the power has the power to really enforce this law. So these are some of the laws that I'm talking about. One is about gender harassment or harassment of women against workplace 2010, and the other key institution is the Ombudsman. Now, there's another one that the government has introduced, and this is about electronic media. Now, again, WhatsApp, social media, and what are the complaints that people are facing? People are saying that we're getting unwanted phone calls, we are getting unwanted pictures, we are just getting information that we did not consent for, and our inboxes and WhatsApp messages are flooded with that. So, for that, you can actually complain. And this is about your digital rights and how to protect yourself in this digital medium. And I believe we have a speaker here as well, I think today, who's going to talk about protecting yourself against in this digital changing, evolving environment. All right. So one thing that I would like to say is when you are trying to file your complaint, you need to preserve all evidence. And I know one thing is that we are not good in keeping records or maintaining a record. Either we are too guilty or we feel really ashamed. We're like, oh my God, what will people think if this information is leaked out? How will our family deal with us? What will our friends say? And also, you've lost your self respect as well. That is true in this whole process. This is very traumatizing. So, one thing is that do not delete evidence. You need to keep that evidence safe because decisions are going to be made based on evidence, and that is very important that we hold on to these things, we save them in a file, and then we properly showcase them. And when I say properly showcase them, this means you have tried a proper report. So think of this as a research or investigation where everything has to be documented. You need to talk about the time, when did the incident happen, where did it happen. And remember, we're talking about workplaces, but if you are working in an offshore office, or let's say there was a meeting in a hotel and a stakeholder conference or a dialogue and an incident happened and it's not in your office, you still can file a report, and that will still be acceptable, and the act, it covers this harassment as well. So that was from my side, and I know we have about 15 minutes left. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And I will share the toolkit as well. Arshan, can you tell me how can I share this toolkit? Can I? So one thing that I would like to share is a toolkit that has been made by UNDP with collaboration from the National Commission of Status of Women, with UNDP as well. And this whole toolkit tells you the process. It tells you about the various forms of discrimination, what are the signs, what are the symptoms, how do you act, how do you build that culture, how do you promote that open discussion, open dialogue without fear of repercussion. And then it talks about the process. So who should be in the inquiry committee, what is the process, what are the templates, how do you file a complaint against the ombudsman. And very interestingly here, I would like to point out that there's this one question, and someone answered a routine question. People say that, oh, what happens if the harasser is in the committee? Well, you have all rights to complain that this person should be removed from the committee. That is your right, and that is perfectly acceptable. There should be a screen button at the bottom of your StreamYard screen. Okay, so I want to share the toolkit with you. Okay, let's see. Let's see. This should be okay. Okay. I apologize here. I have a share screen. Share screen is easiest, blah, blah. Okay, you know what? You can share the link as well. Okay, I will share the link as well. I think sharing the link is going to be much easier. So with that, I am going to conclude my topic. And if you have any questions, if you want to learn about how do you build a culture, if you want to learn about communication techniques, how do you encourage management at all different levels to speak about harassment, then you are more than welcome to ask me, and we can definitely have an interactive session as well. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, I will share the link and post some comments as well. And Ali, if you have any questions, Ali, are you there? Hi, Ali. Oh, good.
Hi, Yamna. Hi.
Hi. Is there anything that you want to ask on behalf of the viewers or people who've commented? Because I can't read the comments because I was too busy talking to you guys. So if you want to give any feedback, if you have any questions generally, any issues that pertain to you, let me know.
Well, coming back to the topic that you were discussing, obviously, as we've seen recently, जो reports आ रही हैं, जो media stories आ रही हैं, harassment and rape cases with the motorway incident as well, how horrifying that was for all of us. Those are increasing in the country. Yet now, with the whole, with after the motorway incident, there's a debate that has incited. There is a camp of people that are obviously advocating for capital punishment for these people who commit crimes of harassment or rape or these things that make women feel uncomfortable in any situation. So with that, how do you feel? I mean, do you think that there's a need to educate our youth as well and our general public about what constitutes as harassment, how to make women feel comfortable in these situations in the workplace or wherever they are? Or do you think punishment is the only solution in this regard?
No, see, we need to take we have to take all sides of this argument. So, of course, at one hand, we need to educate society and educate really everyone. And yes, we need to have some punitive action as well. So there has to be some punishment. Of course, there needs to be a standard. There needs to be an example. People have to see that if you do these despicable crimes, you will face consequences. So it has to go hand in hand. I completely agree that punishment should be there and it should be severe so that people are deterred. That's how society works. Law and order. You have rules, you disobey them, you're punished. That's how we work, and there is no anarchy. So, education, very important. Let's talk. So, rather than again saying that these things don't happen in Pakistan, they do happen in Pakistan. They're not that reported, and now they are being reported in the media. So suddenly everyone's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Is it social media? Is it that women have found the courage to speak? But those incidents have always been there in society. So rather than just putting our head in the sand like an ostrich, we need to recognize that there are problems and address them progressively in a tolerant manner. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I think I also want to come back to the regard that for a lot of women, I think it's also difficult for them to report when things like harassment happen to them because, there's also a culture, they feel like that no one's going to listen to them or, victim blaming, they're going to suffer into that. So how do you think, and also now, obviously, thanks to because of the motorway protests, a lot of men have also come forward in support of this that we need to have a better culture for women. So, how do you think men in general can also help to make this space, to make these environments safer for women in general,
So
and to
first,
the culture of
yeah,
victim blaming?
so thing is that include men in the conversation, and I think women in their household should have conversations with the men in their family and say, hey, listen, have you ever been pinched or groped or while you were walking, did anyone try to touch you? Please just ask this question, and then you will see all these answers and you will have this conversation going on. Or just say that, oh, have you, I mean, just ask, I'm going to ask you, do you feel you've been, if you're crossing the road, do you think you feel unsafe or do you think people stare at you? Yeah, okay,
Well,
Adi, we're going to
to
ask
be
you.
completely honest, as a man, no, no. I
Yeah,
mean,
see,
it's possible to go in a dark alleyway and feel completely safe, unlike most women in Pakistan, or
see,
actually all women in Pakistan.
so see, that's the conversation starter. That's it, where you say, "Oh, I want to listen to your story." See, this is what you do. You listen to stories and say, "Okay, so you said that no, you feel completely safe," and then you'll have lots of women who say that, you know what, it's unsafe. Like I'm a grown up, but I still, if I want to go out for a walk, I still need to take my brother, and both of us are in our 30s now, and I'm like, why? And I've lived abroad as well, where it was so safe for me to just walk alone at any time of the night. And here in Pakistan, I'm back and I have to take someone with me. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, where is my freedom? Or I just feel so, I don't feel empowered or capacitated at all. I'm an adult, for God's sake. And I still need to take someone with me. Or I have to really think, oh, how am I dressed? Or what time am I out? Or I should be very careful not to draw attention to myself. Trust
Yeah,
me.
I agree. I mean, I face that situation as well when the woman has to go out, for shopping or for an event, that there's a man in the house has to go with her as sort of a bodyguard of sorts, and that really
Exactly.
feels ridiculous, even for like grown women. But that really is the reality right now, and we really need to work to reduce this sort of culture in our country, so that women can really feel safe in the streets because they deserve to feel safe the same way we do in the
So
streets.
all this is also a lot of, it's culture, patriarchy. It's this whole idea of controlling people, the whole idea that, oh, we are better than you. It's an anthropological study of how people think and behave. But in hindsight, and I would conclude by saying that educate people, educate yourself, talk about these issues, and know your rights. That's also important. We've talked about the issues, but do you know the laws in our country? Do you know what the Constitution is saying to protect you? So, yeah, educate, know the laws. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so yes, we're also running over time. So we're gonna then conclude your session formally. Thank you so much, Yamna, for this lovely session and really, really informative, especially in today's circumstances. And it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. I will share the toolkit with you guys and you'll share it with all the audiences. Sorry, I am technologically challenged. Couldn't find that button, but I will share it with you. Okay.
Oh, it's
Thank you.
completely fine.
Okay. Bye bye. So good luck, everyone. And yeah, thanks, guys. Good job, organizers. Bye bye. Leaving the studio.